Okay, hi. So, given the circumstances with the virus, I decided to focus on having a congenital hand amputation, specifically on my right, because it is my dominant hand. So, for this assignment, I decided to stick a long sock and cover my whole right hand, so it only gave me the ability to use my left hand throughout the 48 hours. So during this, because of everything going on, the only really outside place I went to besides my apartment was to Walmart. So in terms of having like accessibility, that was fine. But in terms of my apartment, it's not really handicap accessibility because I am in strong apartments. This didn't really affect me so much, but if I was using like a wheelchair or even a quad cane, this would really affect my endurance. So this assignment actually made me realize like, oh, this would be difficult for this disability. So I think as in terms of maybe changing the assignment to maybe alter it, have a different disability each day, or maybe even make the assignment longer, maybe 72 hours or even a week. I know that is kind of extensive and maybe unrealistic, but that is just something that I thought of as I was doing this. But anyway, so in terms of my personal reflection, the first question I chose to answer was, what did you learn from this experience and how will it help you become a better clinician? So during this, I've always felt sympathetic and empathetic towards individuals with disabilities. A lot of people know my brother actually has autism. He's 10 years old. So going out in the community with him and having like his temper tantrums because he is hypersensitive to certain things, we get a lot of looks. So I already knew what was coming into this. So because of this assignment, I feel even more sympathetic and empathetic. This actually reminded me of the movie Wonder. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, but Wonder is about a school-aged child who actually has a facial deformity, and he has difficulties around the community, specifically the school setting, because he gets a lot of looks. It's altering his psychosocial, his self-esteem, which is making it difficult for him to actually create friendships or even maintain the friendships that he's had. So this will help me become a better clinician because I was able to use my therapeutic use of self and put myself in his or her shoes and understand what my client is truly going through. So obviously, with it only being 48 hours, we still maybe not even understand completely how somebody with a disability is feeling, but this definitely made me feel more sympathetic and empathetic towards people with disabilities across the lifespan. What did you learn about the ADL and IADL process through my 48-hour disability stimulation, and how does it differ from my baseline? So I learned that I take each move and activity for granted day to day. Like, for example, I just grabbed this water bottle. I did that in 2 seconds. But for somebody who has low endurance and stuff like that, simple tasks for us is going to be difficult for them. I never truly realized how much extra time certain activities take, and I'll explain like later on, like the cooking. I did just a sandwich because I didn't have that many resources here at school, but I always will read articles, watch the news about people getting into car accidents, and then they suffer from TBI, spinal cord injuries, and so on. I actually know somebody personally who experienced a car accident, and he is complete TBI, complete personality change. He's always wheelchair bound now. He's fully dependent on his support system. So because I've experienced this assignment, I've also seen outside resources. This has really made me realize like it's hard for those people out there, and other injuries that this is life-changing for people. And so this, for the baseline, it altered my baseline because I wasn't able to use my dominant hand, and I always rely on my dominant hand. Like, even when I played basketball in high school, I would always use my dominant hand. So with having my right hand taken away essentially for 48 hours, that was truly difficult. So for the part two, I chose to answer about, do you feel this assignment is controversial? Please justify your answer. So I said it depends on the disability and the situation. So for example, if I had a neck brace and let's say a quad cane for my disability, and I saw somebody in public with the same kind of thing, he or she may get offended. However, if I've heard from classmates that actually had more experience with this before the virus happened, that people actually thought the student was actually injured. So like for the neck brace, for example, I remember one of the classmates told me that they thought something was actually wrong with them, and they whispered like, oh, you need to clean up the floor so it's not a slipping hazard because you see they're already in a neck brace, like stuff like that. But for myself and my classmates, I feel like we're very mature enough to handle this kind of assignment. However, there's always pros and cons to everything, so there might be people that get offended, but as a future occupational therapist, I believe this assignment is the closest we will get to understanding what it's like to have a limitation or a disability that can hinder our everyday life. So the next question is, discuss your community outing, how you felt, and the people's reactions and other interactions you may have had during this experience. So as I said, I only went to Walmart. I was there to buy a few groceries. So I explored about half the store. I bought just bread, bologna, and mayonnaise just to make a simple sandwich, just because I can't really cook myself. And I had limited resources and money being stuck at school. But during this, it was quite difficult to gather all the items with my left hand. And I always tried to ask my friends for help, and I was like, no, like, for some people, like, they need to learn to be independent. And considering I'm 21 years old in this situation, like, a 21-year-old is not going to want to rely on somebody 24/7 just to get stuff to shop for themselves. Like, at this age, this is where we want to be independent, so it starts now. So to be honest, I did feel embarrassed. I did see some people look at me. I also would see some people look at me, and then they would talk to the people with them. And so I was like, oh boy, like, I can only imagine how it feels to actually have a disability, and like your whole surroundings, everybody's just looking at you and talking to you. Like, it's a lot of pressure. So let's see. What specific items did you choose to make for your meal? So as I stated, I just made a bologna sandwich. I went to Walmart for these resources. And then at my apartment, I had to undo the loaf of bread with just my left hand. So I had to do a lot of radial and ulnar deviation, which I thought was so difficult with just my left hand. Like, I literally just wanted to grab the loaf of bread with my right hand. So I honestly asked for help from one of my roommates. And it would have been great to have like an adaptive equipment, whether it was like a bio nest or something, or even I'm not sure what it's called, but it's one of those things where it makes it easier to radial and ulnar deviate. Say if I was opening the jar of mayonnaise, it would make it a lot easier so it's not like so slippery, because I found that difficult. Like, I was trying to hold my body with the counter and trying to remove the cap from the mayonnaise, and it was always slipping everywhere from the counter. So let's see. The other aspect I found that was most difficult in the meal preparation was spreading the mayonnaise on the bread, because the only thing that was really stable with the piece of bread was the counter, and using just my left hand to spread it back and forth was really difficult. So I had a lot of mayonnaise like leaking from the side of the bread, which was not pretty. But so my group was provided the PEOP model, and this model focuses on this person, the environment, the occupation, and then his or her performance. So the interaction between the person and the environment can positively or negatively influence one's occupational performance. So for example, for myself, and then the environment at Walmart, my occupation for this, I was the shopper. So I was shopping for the items. My performance was kind of poor because I've never actually experienced this before. So for some people, like, this is a problem until they seek therapy, until they find ways to adapt. And it also brought me to the OA model as well. Like, you need to find ways to adapt in order to master things. But the one specific theory that I decided to focus on was the psychodynamic model, because this was difficult to actually go out into public without receiving looks or feeling uncomfortable. And I know this can significantly impact one's self-esteem. And I know personally for my brother, because he has autism, he sometimes holds like a communication device, and we sometimes get looks with that. And it's crazy to think that, because autism is such a common developmental disability, so you think people would give people looks like that, but it's still a common thing. And so with me walking around Walmart with a sock, like, that was just a whole nother level. So I can only imagine for people who actually have a congenital right hand amputation. So the last question is, what would make this assignment even better for the students in the future? So honestly, as I stated before, this is probably the closest we're going to experience for a situation like this. Like, it put me in the person's shoes. It made me feel more sympathetic and empathetic towards people with disabilities. However, I said maybe make the time period more longer, like I said in the beginning, or even have two disabilities, have one on one day and one on the other, and then possibly compare and contrast the two disabilities, and then also describe what we can do as occupational therapists with this specific population or disability. And I think that is all I wanted to cover. Oh, last thing. So I'm a mentor for Advocates Incorporated in Syracuse. So basically, I'm a mentor for people with disabilities, and I bring them out in the community, and I work on their specific goals. So, for example, I've been working with this young lady who has had an intellectual disability, and I've been working with her for about, I would say, 4 years now. It's only a summer job, and she has a difficult time expressing herself. People can't really understand her, and the only reason I can understand her thoroughly is because I've been working with her for so long. So what I notice with her is if we're ordering food, for example, the cashier or the worker always looks at me to talk for her when in reality she's capable of speaking for herself. So that was just another thing that actually reminding me of this assignment with the looks that I was getting. So I think this assignment was beneficial because I was able to relate it back to the real life scenarios that I've experienced with people that I've worked with along with my brother. Thank you.